In a small house nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town, far from the hustle and bustle of the busy streets, Claire and Mark, a couple in their 40s, were happy to enjoy a peaceful evening. Their home, simple but welcoming, had a warm atmosphere, with rays of soft light filtering through the curtains. The children, Leah and Hugo, after finishing their homework, had settled into their room for a new adventure in their imaginary world. Their joyful laughter, punctuated by the sounds of games and enthusiastic discussions, usually echoed through the walls. Zeus, their pit bull with a deep and faithful gaze, was usually a silent but attentive observer of these moments. The dog had grown up with the children, and more than anything, he protected them with unfailing loyalty. For Zeus, these children were his family, and he knew instinctively that he must watch over them, like a silent but omnipresent presence. The dog was always there, ready to defend, ready to offer comfort and calm in times of joy or fear. But that night, something was different. Claire, who was on the ground floor, in the living room, had looked up from her book.
There was a strange emptiness in the house.
Usually, children's laughter filled the air, but tonight there was only a heavy, heavy silence. A silence that enveloped him and pinched his soul. Her ears strained, trying to hear even a whisper, but everything was so quiet that it made her uncomfortable. Mark, for his part, was immersed in his office upstairs, focused on his work reports, and had not noticed the strange atmosphere that floated in the house. But for Claire, this silence had a bitter taste, almost threatening. She knew something was wrong. It wasn't like usual. Her maternal instinct pushed her to act. She got up and hurried up the stairs. His footsteps echoed in the quiet of the house. She stopped for a moment in front of the door to the children's room, a strange sensation tightening her throat. On the other side, everything was still silent.
No noise, no movement.
She strained her ears, trying to catch any hint of what was going on inside. Then she noticed him.
Zeus.
The usually cheerful and friendly dog stood there, firmly positioned between the door and the interior of the room. His eyes, normally gentle and comforting, were now fixed on the room with an intensity that chilled Claire. He didn't move, his muscles tense, his air concentrated, almost frozen in a state of alert. This posture was so different from her usual behavior that she felt a shiver. The dog was not frightened. He wasn't agitated. No, he was frozen in silent vigilance, as if blocking access to something he could sense but no one else could see. Claire, her heart pounding, reached for the doorknob. Her mind searched for a logical explanation, but intuition urged her not to ignore this strange situation. She turned the handle gently, hoping to open the door and break the silence. But the door did not give way. As if Zeus, with silent determination, was holding her back. She called softly, "Zeus, come here, it's okay, let me pass." But the dog doesn't react. His eyes didn't even look away from the room, as if he were in a state of total concentration.
A shiver of terror ran down Claire's spine.
She felt helpless, her mind filling with unanswered questions. Why did Zeus do this? Why this suddenly protective behavior? Why this refusal to obey his calls, although full of gentleness? Mark arrived hurriedly, his mind confused by the scene he had just discovered. Her eyes landed on Zeus, still as ever, locking the door with silent determination. Mark crouched in front of the dog, trying to get around him. He placed a hand on her back, stroking gently, but there was no response. Zeus was frozen, as unresponsive to his touch as if he were a statue. "You really don't want to move, do you?" Mark murmured, perplexed. He tried to open the door again with more force, but the dog still opposed him, the hairs on his back bristling, his gaze fixed on the interior of the room. "That's weird," he said, frowning. "What's the matter with him tonight?" Claire stood a few steps behind him, a strange feeling of unease filling every fiber of her being. She could see the tension in the dog's body, this rigidity that was nothing like his usual calm and affectionate demeanor. She felt like something terrible was coming, but she couldn't put her finger on it. His eyes met those of Mark, and in their gazes, concern grew. There were no words, only a silent exchange that said it all. Something was wrong, but what? Claire, almost instinctively, made a decision. "How about we check the security cameras?" she suggested, her voice trembling with nervousness. Mark agreed without hesitation, his gaze still fixed on the dog who still did not move. Mark rushed to the phone in the living room, his hand shaking slightly as he unlocked the screen. The security cameras were linked to an app on his phone. He launched the app and searched for images of the children's room. On the surveillance screens, the room was clearly visible, bathed in subdued light, as it was every evening. Toys were scattered on the floor, and the children's bed was a mess, reflecting their previous activity. Everything seemed normal. Everything except Zeus. The dog stood frozen in front of the door, his posture rigid and his eyes glowing with unusual intensity. Ears pricked, he was staring at something beyond the range of the cameras, something the parents' eyes couldn't perceive. His body betrayed no agitation, no fear. He was not on alert, not in panic, but in protective mode, extreme vigilance, like a dog sensing imminent danger. The unease in the air slowly transformed into a dull, penetrating fear. Claire felt overwhelmed by a cold thought that popped into her mind, irrational but inevitable. What if someone had broken into the house without the cameras noticing? Perhaps a stealthy person, an intruder who knew how to move silently, out of reach of electronic eyes. Their cameras were effective, but they were not infallible. There were blind spots, places where technology couldn't penetrate. "Do you think there's really anyone in the house?" Mark said hoarsely, as if he was trying to convince himself. But Claire felt a growing certainty.
The dog knows something they don't.
She didn't need to understand or ask questions. This behavior, this inexplicable resistance, was not that of a dog who was afraid or who felt threatened. No. Zeus was not afraid. He was the protector, the one who sensed a danger they could not yet grasp. Claire couldn't wait any longer. She grabbed her phone with a trembling hand, her heart pounding. Her fingers slid across the screen as she dialed the police number, her mind wandering in panic. The idea of leaving a stranger in the house, without knowing what he was doing, terrified her. The sense of urgency was omnipresent. "There's something weird with our dog," she said, her voice shaking, although she tried to control herself. "He's blocking our children's bedroom door and refusing to move. We think there might be someone in the house." She didn't know if that was what she was thinking, but the idea that an intruder might be hiding somewhere in the house was becoming more and more real. The dispatcher's voice, calm but deep, rang through Claire's phone like a lifeline in this sea of confusion. "We will send a patrol immediately. Can you evacuate the house in the meantime?" The reassuring tone of the dispatcher did not succeed in dissipating Claire's growing anxiety. She turned to Mark, her eyes betraying a dull fear she had not yet shared. Mark, with a nod of his head, agreed. They had to protect their children. They had to act quickly. Both parents rushed into the children's room. Leah and Hugo, now aware that something was wrong, huddled against Zeus, seeking security in his imposing figure. Claire slowly guided them towards the exit, her heart racing. Zeus, as a perfect protector, followed the movement, his approach silent and his eyes still fixed on the door of the room. Nothing seemed to be able to move him from his mission. The silence in the street was oppressive as they walked away from the house. Claire squeezed Leah's hand tightly, while Mark, while carrying Hugo, watched the back with anxiety. A shiver ran down his spine. He couldn't get rid of the image of Zeus, this dog they had adopted 2 years ago, faithful and always so calm, now become their only defense. A few minutes later, a police car entered the street discreetly. No cries of sirens, no strobe lights disfigured the tranquility of the neighborhood, but the atmosphere changed instantly. The police officers, 2 men in their 30s, quickly got out of the car, weapons ready, their movements restrained but professional. Their eyes searched every shadowy corner, every window, every suspicious movement. "Stay there," one of the police officers ordered in an authoritative but calm voice. "We're going to take matters into our own hands. Can you explain the situation to us?" Mark and Claire, in a palpable state of nervousness, quickly told them about the incident. They insisted on the strangeness of Zeus' behavior, on this invisible barrier that the dog had erected between them and the bedroom door. The police officer agreed without commenting, and with a nod, ordered his colleague to search the room. The police entered the children's room with caution. Every gesture was measured, every detail scrutinized with attention. They checked the corners, the closets, the underwear on the bed, but it was when they got closer to the window that one of them stopped in his tracks, his eyes staring at something shocking. He knelt down, peeking out of the window opening, which was slightly ajar, just enough for someone to slip through. But that wasn't all. Nearby, thin, dusty footprints led directly to Leah's bed. Footsteps of someone who had apparently slipped inside through the window before fleeing in a hurry, probably frightened by the arrival of Zeus. The policeman stood up slowly, his jaw clenched. He turned to his colleagues, then to Mark and Claire, his face marked by an expression of horror mixed with relief. "You were lucky," he said finally, his voice laced with respect. "Clearly someone was here, but your dog prevented something much worse. If he hadn't acted the way he did, the intruder would have had plenty of time to do damage or worse." Zeus, always remaining vigilant, silently observed the police officers, like a lion ready to defend its territory. The parents were still in shock, but a deep emotion of gratitude suddenly overcame them. They had not only saved their children from a burglar, but from real danger. Zeus, this dog they had welcomed with love, had offered them much more than companionship. He had sacrificed his usual calm to become the hero they didn't even know they needed. The policeman, touched by this scene of fidelity, placed his hand on Mark's shoulder. "He acted before we could realize the danger. You have a four-legged hero here." Mark, moved, felt warmth in his chest. "He's more than a dog to us," he said in a broken voice. "This is our family." Claire, hugging the children, had no words. She never would have believed that a simple dog could be the key to their safety, the key to their life. Her tears, almost imperceptible, ran silently down her cheeks. But they were the tears of gratitude and love. After the incident, Zeus did not leave the children's room. He sat down by the bed, still alert, but his gaze softened. He was, once again, who he had always been, a faithful dog, a companion.
The family felt more united, stronger.
The anxiety of last night was slowly dissipating, but the truth remained anchored in their hearts. Zeus was not just a pet dog. He was the guardian angel of their home, a protector with piercing eyes, a true hero disguised as a pit bull. From that day on, Claire and Mark looked at Zeus with renewed admiration and love. This dog, so ordinary at first glance, had become an unnoticed hero, a guardian angel in disguise, whose unwavering vigilance and love had saved more than just lives that night. They now knew that no matter what might happen in the future, Zeus would be there to protect his people, and nothing could break this unbreakable bond.